And then in about 5 minutes, we'll crack on with the other stuff that makes up the second part of this tune before it breaks into the electric stuff, which will be next week when it starts to get really good fun. So I'll just play you the various segments now really quickly, and hopefully it'll make sense with the kind of stuff you've been looking for as well. So I'm using my gypsy guitar again because it's loud and you should be able to hear all the notes properly.
Everybody should go on mute, by the way.
Oh yeah, good point. Thanks, folks. All right, so this is how you play the main theme. I'll just lean in, and here we go. So that is a major part of the song. Now, some of you may have played the D major over F sharp like that. Now that is a D chord played the conventional way with your pinky leant across to play the 4th fret of the D string, which is an F sharp. Now I think that's a pretty uncomfortable way of playing that chord. So personally I do it like that. So I bar with my first finger, what's called a half bar. That's a full bar, this is a half bar. And then I put my second finger there to complete the standard D shape, but in a slightly unconventional way. And then I use my ring finger to play the F sharp like that. So you've got an option there. You can play D over F sharp like this. Oops, excuse me. Or D over F sharp like that. It's the same notes. Or if you find the D over F sharp too difficult, you can still get a long way by just playing a normal D. It changes the root note of the exercise. It slightly changes the chromatic movement downwards, but it's not the end of the world. So that's one of those moments where if you're finding that you're struggling to get a hard chord, there's a simple version you can take to complete the tune, and then as you get more confident you can fill in the gaps and go back and play it. So having said that, let me just play that for you again. I'll move on a little bit. The same. This is bar 6. Excuse me. Bar 7 of last week's music. Here comes bar 9. So you walk up to C major, D major, F major 7. Now you've got this little hammer on an A minor shape. So you get yourself into position to play your A minor. And then, okay, all I'm doing there is plucking the B string, hammering on with my first finger there, and then walking up to play a C again, and that's a cheeky D sus4 pulling off onto a D major. Okay, so I'll just play that for you again. What I played there was bar 9, 10, 11 and 12 of last week's chart. Okay, I'll just do that one more time for you. Okay, thumbs up if everybody had a go at that and felt okay. Doesn't have to be fast. You just have to know that the notes are there, and then you can work on it in your own time. So I'll continue. Just moving on. Same thing again. Yeah. That's all the same stuff really, except that F major 7 at the end there is played quaver, quaver, crotchet. And then, now we're on page 2. I'm going to skip that, if you don't mind, folks, because that's all the same stuff again. Same with all of page 2, actually. And let's pick it up at bar 33 on page 3. So, you don't really even need the music from last lesson to do this part of the course. I'm just briefly outlining it again to remind you. And what I should say as well is, obviously, I played it in one complete go for you last lesson with the Zoom recording. But I think taking a bit of feedback, I'll do another recording of both last week's and this week's today on a better camera and upload that to you at the end of this class, just so you can get right in there. I've got a little gimbal thing and a camera mounted on it there. So this is bar 33. Now this is where it gets interesting. Now, did anyone struggle with bar 37 to the end of 40? Those ascending and descending 16th notes are really difficult, aren't they? It's the same fingering in the left hand, so if you have found that up to this point you can play the main verse the other times it happens, then at least you can put your mind at rest to think there is nothing different about the way that you play this section with your left hand. The difference is in your right hand. So I'll do that really slowly again for you. As always, I'm assigning one finger to one string and pretty much keeping it like that as much as possible. So my thumb plays the D string, my first finger plays the G, my middle finger plays the B, and my ring finger plays the E string, and I'm going like this. And I'll do that one more time at speed. Okay, so before I continue, it's probably a good idea to just ask the group and make sure, is there anything I can do to clarify any difficulties that you may have had at bar 37, 38, 39, and 40? Anyone stuck, or is it just a question of you just need to shred it some more to get it, or is there anything making you go, hang on, what's going down? So do me a favour, I know your mics are off. If you're happy for me to continue, go like that. And if anyone's got a problem with anything, go like that, and I'll fix it. Everyone
Jamie,
okay?
you know me. I'm going to throw a question at you now. You know on the very first page, you know the bit. It's bar. It's actually 1, 2, 3. It's bar 4. The end of that. You know, you got the little going up from the A to the C and then back to the B. That timing, because sometimes I feel like I'm guessing. I haven't got the pulse. How would you count that to make sure you get the open fret, the 8th fret, and the 7th fret right on the button?
No bother. Well, first thing to remember is this piece of music is in 4/4, okay? So the time description, the time signature is 4/4, which means that there are 4 quarter notes in the bar, okay? So when you look at time signatures, the top note tells you how many of the bottom note are in the bar, and the bottom note tells you what the division of the bar is. So that means there are 4 quarter notes in the bar. So first thing you should do is count them, and this might sound, you know, ridiculously simple, but counting a bar of 4/4 and making that count in time is actually quite challenging. So you do this: 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you should do that enough that this is happening in your head all the way through this piece of music. 1, 2, 3, 4, and it'll get to the point where you don't have to say 1, 2, 3, or 4. You'll just feel it in your inner monologue, if you like. But that's step one. The second step is to divide each one of those quarter notes, the lower number, into 2, so that the number 1, 2, 3, 4 now has the sound and in between them, and you get 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So all the numbers that you were saying are still in the same place. You're still saying 1, 2, 3, 4 in exactly the same place as you were, but now you're adding and in between them to help you keep track of the 8th notes, which are either side of them. So bar 4, if you counted it to yourself and worked out where those last 3 8th notes are, then you can see they're the last 3/8 notes of the bar. So if you say this to yourself, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, then that's where the time is. You'll know that that's how you play the notes. So I'll count out that for you. This is bar 4 of page 1 of the chart from last week. This is this. 2 and 3 and 4 and, like that. Or if I just do that in isolation, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So that's the way you count it. It's a common difficulty that you shouldn't just be counting 1, 2, 3, 4. You should be counting 1, 2, 3, 4 plus the ands either side of it, so that you know what kind of feel there is in the music, and you can keep track of which quaver you're on within a bar. So did that help a little bit? Cool. Okie dokie. So let's just finish this up, and then we'll move on with the new chart for today. So this is bar 41, and you're playing your A minor 7 chord like this. Now, the strumming pattern for that is this. Down, down, up, down, down. You can do it any way you want. I left it blank because I didn't want to make things look more complicated than they need to be. And notated strumming patterns with rhythm tend to make people go, what? If you just play that rhythm, then it's almost certain that you will play it with that pattern, which is down, down, up, down, down. Okay? Then we've got A minor without your little finger on. And then a G6. That G6 chord is just that. It's a G chord without the bottom half. To a D major, then you do the same thing again. That's a tricky bit. Did anyone struggle with that? It's lovely that. It works because you're playing the chords of C major or A minor, but over the top of a D note. And then that happens again, and then that's the end of last week's class, and we're going to move on. So 41 to the end of that page, to the end of that part, goes like this. So that's everything talked about from last lesson again, just summarized. Is everyone happy for me to move on to today's stuff? Okay, well, nobody went like this, so I'm going for it. Okay, so if you can have the music in front of you, that would be good. Everyone got it? Yep. All right, cool. Okay. So this is another, we've got quite a lot to get through here. Another 4 pages, is it? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 5 pages. But like the previous part, a lot of it's very similar with tiny little adjustments here and there. So you'll find that you'll quickly get the hang of this if you work on it. So moving on, we have this. Now that is just a C major chord. This is bar 1, by the way. And we're arpeggiating it just the way we have for the rest of this tune. Thumb, first finger, middle finger, ring finger. The customer announcement arpeggio. Okay. And then the next chord is a G major, but Jimmy Page is a clever chap. So instead of just playing that, he takes the most interesting note of the G major chord and puts it in the root of the chord so that you get this lovely descending bass line. So this is a G over a B chord because he's put B in the bass. So a C chord goes to G. And you can leave your finger on as you would a normal G chord if that helps you identify it, but it's actually not part of the music, so I wouldn't worry about it. So. Okay. Another Jimmy Page specialism that is the descending bass line taking you from one chord to the other. What a rhythm guitar part, it's fantastic. So this is bar 2. It's pretty much the same as what you will have encountered in the previous chart from last week. You have this hammer on to outline an A minor chord. So you can do this by first establishing the fact that it is an A minor and then just hammering onto your first finger like that. Or you can hammer on first and then build the chord while the note resonates. It doesn't really matter how you choose to do it, but it is important that you manage to get to the hammer on immediately and then walk through the chord, making it sound like you don't find it technically challenging. You don't want to go like this. That's not going to help. You know, you need to try and get into that A minor chord nice and quickly. So, and then you have that ascending line again, which is A to B. Okay? So, the first 2 bars of this A section go like this. So can we all have a go at playing that together nice and slowly? Leave your microphones on mute, but this is an opportunity to have a go. And if you find that there are any technical challenges, then you can ask me a question. So let's do it together as a group. I'll count it in for you like this. I'll say 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then when I say 1 again, that's the speed we'll play. And because I was saying 1 and 2 and, I'm not just telling you the time signature, I'm telling you the speed of the quavers, which are the 8th notes, so you should know the speed of your arpeggiation. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Tricky. One more time. Here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Good. Now, what I should have said, by the way, is when you play the ascending line A, B, that B, the 2nd fret of the A string, should be played with your 2nd finger because the next chord is C. And you need to give yourself the time to use a different finger to get to the C. If you go like that, then it's too late, you know. So back to another C chord. And in the same move, now you play a G over a B again, but you've got to jump onto an F major 7. And that F major 7 is what we call a rhythmic push. So if you have a look at the part, can you see that the F major 7 happens before the beginning of the next bar? Now if this wasn't a rhythmic push, it would sound like this. But he's brought it all forward 1/8 note to give us a sense of forward motion like this. So when you're practicing that, it might be a good idea to put a metronome on and just practice placing your 8th notes along with the metronome and changing to that F major 7th chord on the last 8th note of a bar. So I'll be your metronome and tell you what I mean. It would be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now it's a very good idea that you learn to say out loud these rhythms. Some of you may already be able to do this, but I always find, even if you're really good at a particular rhythm, saying them out loud tells you so much about whether you rush or whether you drag. So it's a good opportunity to try again. So let me do that for you again and see if you can copy it. I'm saying 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3. I didn't go as far as 4. And I'll do that again a little faster. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Now I think it might be pertinent to just leave a moment there for private practice. So have a little go doing exactly what I've just asked you to do. I want to see everybody vocalizing 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and only play at the speed that you can comfortably say this stuff, and make sure that what you're playing with your right hand actually matches up to what you're saying. So have a quick 30 seconds to practice this. And if this is, in any way too difficult at the moment, that's fine. I will film myself again playing this for you, just like we did last time, but I'll do it on a better camera for you. And then you've got plenty of time to be practicing it afterwards. Remember, I'm not going to test anyone on how well they can play this. The idea is that you work in it in your own time. So I'll do it again a few times. Join in if you wish. This is bar 3 and bar 4. So we go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2. Here we come around again. 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... I'll do it one more time at a little bit closer to the tempo of the record so you can recognize it for what it is. And I'll start from the beginning of this page so you can see it in context. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Now it's quite hard to split your brain in two and do that, to vocalize the time while you play something else, but it's really good for you. It'll help you develop a much more robust awareness of what it is you're doing and whether it's working or not. So I'll do that one more time. Join in with me if you wish. And then I think, with the permission of you guys, we'll move on a little bit. So from the beginning of page 1, we're going to play the first 4 bars together, and I'll count them out loud. Count with me if you're feeling brave. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Okay, is there anyone in the room who fancies giving us a demo of that? Anyone feeling that they're doing it well enough to brave giving us a quick go? Jim Lott, let's have you. Go for it. Switch your microphone on and let's hear it. I mean, you did go like that, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Okay, good. I don't want to pick on anybody. All right, you get one go. And if you get anything wrong, we're just going to ditch you straight off.
I can't count it. If I count it, it goes wrong. So.
Okay, all right, that's okay. Yeah, I think that deserves a round of applause. Very good.
Thank you.
Marvellous, you can stay on the call. Well done. Okay, anybody else want to have a go, or shall we move on? Okay, no more volunteers. Well, I'm not the type to pick on anybody, so we'll move on. Okay, so bar 5 towards the end of bar 8 is identical, except one note. I don't know, the eagle-eyed among you may have spotted this, but can you see the bar 5, how bar 5 is very subtly different to bar 1? It looks the same, but there's a D note which is played at the 3rd fret of the B string, whereas in bar 1 it's just an open B string. Now we're splitting hairs here because no one's really going to care if you play both of those bars the same, but the idea here was to try and make as dead on a transcription as I could, so there you go. So this is what bar 1 sounds and looks like. And this is what bar 5 sounds and looks like. And that is just the difference between playing a G chord like this. I'm sure in your guitar playing careers, you've seen that sometimes you can play a G with 3 fingers, and sometimes you can play it with 4 fingers. That's the only difference there, is that in the first chord, the chord comes from that, and in the second chord, it comes from that. All right? But other than that, everything from bar 5, 6, 7, 8 is the same as 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we're making good progress. So all of that together sounds like this, and I'll count it out loud. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 2 and 3 and... Okay? So I don't think we need to go over any of that because it's the same except for that G chord. So, bar 9. This is what we call a tag in music, where you repeat something that's just happened, you do it again to signify a change in the music. So we just did this. Then he repeats it. Before developing into the A minor 7 section that we've already dealt with last lesson. So I'm going to play for you everything up to the end of bar 9. A little bit quicker because we've got so much to crack on with. And it goes like this. What I played there brought us up to bar 10. Okay? Now, again, this isn't just a lesson in me showing you what's played on the record. I'm interested in showing you how it's played. And try to, if you can, when you're playing these arpeggiated chords, to be really careful to make sure that each note resonates freely without fouling the note below or above it. Now, it's very easy when you're playing guitar to do, I'm trying to think of the best way to show you this, where your finger, if this is a guitar string, your finger might fall over like that and foul the guitar string next to it, or in front of it like that and hit the next one. Try to be very careful so that when you play these arpeggios, each note resonates perfectly, because the idea here is a principle called dovetailing, where you're changing from one chord to the next, but you're allowing the previous notes to resonate so that it almost covers up the fact that the chords just changed. So instead of going like this, obviously I'm exaggerating, but the idea is to try and make sure that your technique with your left hand is excellent so that there's none of this. And also that your right hand, when you come to play a note, let's say you've just played a note on the A string. Careful not to do this, everybody does this. If you were to then play another note on the A string, lots of people do this, where they actually land on the A string again before they pluck it. And what that does is it kills the previous note before you play the new one. Now, if you want to sound like this is easy, and essentially I think that that's the goal with all of this stuff, is to try and play something for an audience and demonstrate the fact that it sounds effortless. Effortless music is a joy to listen to. Stuff which sounds like you can't quite do it isn't. So if you want to communicate that to your listeners and to yourself, make sure that your right hand knows how to play one string at a time without fouling the ones either side of it as well. So you could just sit there in front of the TV going like this. As opposed to going like this. You hear the difference? So what you're trying to do there is only touch the string with your left or right hand at the moment that you use it, and not in a method which might kill the previous note before you do another one. So I'm going to play it for you again, and if you could just listen to the way I'm doing it, trying to make my technique as good as I possibly can, you'll see what I mean about dovetailing, where the notes of the previous chord are still resonating while I move the next one into view, like this. Okay, that's a real discipline, that. You could spend 6 months just working on playing those first 9 bars as perfectly as you possibly can. So, anyway, shall we move on? I think so. So, where are we now? We're up to bar 10, aren't we? Bar 10 is the same information you've already seen when it was on page, when it was on the previous lesson's transcription. So this is all the same stuff. Woohoo! That goes like this. Now, there's a couple of subtleties in there. Let's just make sure that we talk about them. Let's skip through from bar 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Can you look at bar 15, please, which is the last bar of the first line of page 2. Have you spotted that there's a bit of this going on? Have you seen that? That foxes a few people. That's just a D major chord, and then very briefly taking away your first finger and your second finger as a pair and hammering them back on. Now, if you really get into studying Led Zeppelin and listening to Jimmy Page, you can hear him do that exact move on that exact chord all the way through their back catalogue. It's a country technique. Very popular one as well. So practice that for a moment, folks. Hold down your D major chord, and then take your first and second fingers off, but make sure you remain connected with your third finger. Strum the 4 strings you normally would, and then hammer on nice and cleanly. Now you have to do that fast and with quite a lot of pressure. If you do it too slowly, then your fingers will actually kill the energy that the strings had. So you have to get the strings onto the fret quickly before you kill the energy. James Taylor does that all the time. Okay, so I'm going to count you in 1, 2, 3, and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay? It's a tricky little thing, that, but it's worth getting to grips to, because it's a lovely technique you can apply to all of your other chords that you already know. You can play a C major and you can play your G major. You have to decide which strings to use. In fact, that's the whole basis of that Doobie Brothers tune, Long Train Running. Just as a little digressive point, because it's fun, that's just playing a minor 7th bar chord, but playing it without these 2 fingers first, and then hammering it on. And someone must have been sitting there drinking a bottle of beer and thought, oh, that sounds cool, I'll make a song around that, and that's where it comes from. But as I say, this isn't an exercise in playing Doobie Brothers stuff, but it's a nice little digression. So that, for any of you who are interested, is just my finger barring at the 10th fret, but only barring the top 5 strings, so forget about the E. And your target chord is a G minor 7, which goes 10th fret, 12th fret, from the A string that is, 10, 12, 10, 11, 10. That's your target chord. But what I'm doing is approaching it from having none of the chordal fingers and just leaving the bar on. You strum and then hammer on. Anyway, that was just a little thing that I thought you might be interested in, so we'll get back to the topic in hand. So, from bar 10 up to, where should we go to? That bar, so bar 15, it goes like this. Here it is. That's where John Bonham comes in. There's something else I want to talk to you about actually here as well. This is what I call a get out of jail for free chord. Now, have a look at bar 11. So just after there's the rehearsal mark that says B, comes bar 11, and the very last chord is just the open strings. Can you see it? It's just that. Now, you shouldn't worry too much about that particular chord. That is allowing you to get to the next chord by just bashing the open strings. This is, I think, an important lesson actually. The guitar, part of the tradition of the guitar is that when you're playing chordal stuff and you need to get from one chord to the next, it's perfectly acceptable, but very often not written, that you take your hands off but just keep strumming anyway, because whatever you do to sound effective as a rhythm guitar player, you should never break the rhythm that your right hand or your strumming hand is demonstrating. So, rhythm is more important than melody, because you can get people to dance to this. But if you're finding that the chords are a little bit difficult, you can't break the rhythm in order to get to the chord. You couldn't go. So what happens is, and this is a real part of the heritage of this instrument, is that you just go like that. You continue the motor of your right hand, take your hand off, hit the strings anyway, which gives you the time you need to get to the next chord on the downbeat of the next bar. So if I play the same chord progression I just played for you, that was this. And it's so subtle you don't even hear it. There. So nobody explained that to me for years, and I was thinking, how on earth do you get from that chord to that chord in 1/8 note? It's impossible. Well, no one is actually doing that, but when you read tab books or when you look at notated music, I don't know why it's almost sort of accidentally kept a secret that really what's happening is you're hitting the open strings, which is the wrong strings, but you do it so fast it keeps the right hand, and that allows you to do it. So maybe that might help a few folk. It certainly helped me when I realized that. So how that is applicable to what we're talking about here, well, bar 10, 11, bar 11, the end of bar 11 into the beginning of bar 12, getting from that D chord back to the A minor 7 with your pinky on the top, that's a hard chord change. But luckily you've got this little to give you just that second to get back to the chord. So I'll just play bar 10, 11 and 12 and I'll stop, and you'll see what I mean. If you really listen out for it, I think you'll hear it now. So. Did you hear it? Now, if I try and do that without the get out of jail for free chord, it's almost impossible. I mean, I had to go, yeah, and go for it. And I wasn't exaggerating there. That's too fast, and it makes it sound like I don't find it easy. So you have to find methods to make it sound to everybody else that it's a piece of cake for you, even when it's not. And that's the first obvious compromise that will be made. And that is what happens on the record. So, top tip. Okay, so, and we just got up to bar 18, where Mr. Bonham comes in with his drum kit.
Jamie?
Which is, yes,
Good
who
question.
said that? Is that you, Jim?
Yeah.
Go for it.
At the end of bar 15, you've got that hammer on. So you've got the
Yeah.
D chord
I know
and
what
the hammer
the
on.
question's going to be. Yeah.
Do you play open strings on that, or do you carry on with the D?
No, it's exactly as it is written, because he's doing the same thing. The only difference here is he's hammered on like this, and he's done exactly the same thing with his left hand that he did in bar. What did we say it was? It was bar 11. The difference is, if you can see that there are two tails to the note joining it. Instead of playing a quaver, which lasts 1/8 note, he's playing 2 semiquavers, which is 2 16th notes. So his left hand is still doing the same thing at the same time. The only difference is he decided to go like that instead of. So that's a very wordy answer to your question. I'll just show you. From bar 14 would be this. I'll do it a bit slower and see if you can watch my right hand. Did you spot it? It's the same thing as if I just played one note, but because he's motoring, I think I'll do it a bit faster so that you can see it actually. Yeah, did you see that? It's just a flick, and it's so nonchalant that it's one of those things that just happens if you play the guitar and you try to do a certain move in time. That will be a natural consequence. So there are lots of little corners of notated music which look very deliberate and very unnecessarily complicated, I think. And that's an example of it, because it looks like you're instructed to go like this. But if you actually just see it as you playing a D chord that you hammer onto and you take your hand off and keep motoring in order to get to the next chord, then you'll find that it'll happen like this. Which is a piece of cake. So in answer to your question, yes, he's playing exactly that, but you probably will too. If you just allow yourself to play with a 16th feel at that bar, you probably will never have to think about it at all, and it will happen naturally. Does that answer your question, Jim? Okay, cool. Nice. Right, so we are up to bar 18, which is verse 3 and 4. But just before we go on, I don't want to just sort of monologue at you. Is everyone happy with what we've done so far? Are there any other questions at this point? We're doing all right? Cool. Good. Don't feel you can't interject and ask anything you want. So, where are we now then? Now, what comes up here is essentially the same stuff again. So I'll just whiz through this a little bit. I'd like to talk about that bit there actually. For the hawk-eyed amongst you, you'll see that the rhythm is there, although the chords are the same. The rhythms are subtly different. And do you know what? I mean, my honest opinion of things like this is that you don't really have to get the microscope out with this kind of stuff and get so deep into it that you know, in conversation at the pub, you could say, well, actually, at bar 27, Jimmy Page plays, 2 quavers and 3/16 notes. It doesn't really matter. No one cares. Just play that, That's what he did. He didn't think when he was at the recording session, I'll tell you what, I'm going to fox everybody by playing 2 quavers. He definitely didn't do that, So you don't have to either. However, as I've said to you before, I wanted this to be a comprehensive transcription, so I went a little bit nerdy on it for you. But the bar I'm talking about in particular is bar 27. No, is it bar 27? No, excuse me, it's bar 28. At bar 28, he changes the rhythm very slightly to dung da da dung da da, which is the first time that happens. And then it happens quite a lot later on. So this is just for those of you who are really keen to play it exactly as the record. That bar is dun da da dun da da. And if you have a look back up the page at bar there you go, bar 14. There's no dun da da dun da da. It's just dun da da dun 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 dun. Okay? But I'm boring myself, so let's move on. Okay, so what else did we discover in there? So other than that, that's all the same. Don't forget to count that so that you do become really happy that you know where those 8th notes are, like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 4. Now, that's what I want to talk about. How is everybody with these? I think they're quite challenging. Can I just run over them with everybody? This is, where am I looking? I'm looking at bar, well, we could pick it from anywhere, but bar 29 and 30. The last quaver of bar 29 and all of bar 30. That's an E minor triad, which is 9, 8, 7 on the G, B and E strings respectively, but with an open D string hanging underneath. Now try and make sure that you articulate these well enough that they really sing, because it's a real highlight of the song, this. And little chords like this, these are the things that let you know that Jimmy Page used to be a session musician, because these are orchestrated chords. These aren't the kind of things you'd normally do on a guitar. These are the things that piano players do all the time. 3-note chords descending from the key you're in with an alternate bass note is the kind of thing that you get in musicals, and you get in tunes like the Great American Songbook introductions. You know, that kind of thing is not really a guitar thing, and yet here it is in this tune. So it's a real highlight, and we should take some pains to make sure that it sounds lovely. So again, it's back to the making sure you're fretting accurately, make sure that that E doesn't block that G, and make sure that G doesn't block that B, and make sure none of it blocks that open D. Now it's a real strummy bit, this, so now I've picked up my plectrum. And you may notice as well that those chordal interjections are on the offbeat. So that's back to what we were talking about before. Remember, when you're counting a bar out like this, you'd say 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Well, these chords are on the ands, they're not on the numbers. Exactly, Mike. So you get ding, 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, like that. Sorry, you have to hear me sing. Dun, 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 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay? Now that's a bit difficult. I've certainly come across before who can play the chords nicely, but they mix up the rhythm and they go like this. So they sort of add an extra eighth note in so that it doesn't feel syncopated anymore. But the whole point is that this is on the weak beats of the bar, which gives it this lovely forward motion. So I'll just play it for you again. So let's all just try that bar. I'm going to count you in like this. Now the first chord, it's very important that we know where to place that. That one. That's placed on what we'll call the and of 4. So bar 29, let's ignore the other stuff in the bar so we can practice this syncopated rhythm. And you'd get this 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So you hit the strings on a down strum. The strum direction doesn't really matter so much here, but I would suggest a down strum. So make sure you can just practice aiming for the last eighth note of a bar. So count out loud 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and on that and of 4, bam, that's where your chord is. So that would be like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay? I'm going to have a little sip of tea and give you a second to just practice that a few times. Okay, so let's just go through these triad shapes and show you how you would finger them most efficiently, I think. Now, the reason these are called triads is because they are, well, quite obviously 3-note chords, but triads in music are, that's the term you refer to, the simple chords that come from a key you're in. So we're actually in the key here of C major or A minor. It's the same key signature with the same chords. And this is just using an E minor shape, a D major shape, excuse me, a C major shape, and back up, okay? So your first chord, as I said to you, use your third, second and first finger like that. And then use your first finger as the spine for this little exercise. Now slide back 2 frets to the 5th fret. And I would suggest you use your 3rd finger and your 4th finger for this major triad. That one's a minor triad. This one's a major triad down a tone. Okay, that's a D major. You've got D, F sharp and A, and that spells out a D major triad. So, now, you may have noticed, you may not have done, that I'm using my 3rd finger as the outside of this frame on the minor chord, and I'm using my 1st finger for the outside of the other frame on this chord. And when I move to the major one, I'm doing the same. So the chord doesn't change. I just use my little finger in there to change the type of chord. So that would be a minor chord, and that would be a major chord. But what I'm doing is just leaving the frame of my hand identical so that I don't have to worry about 5 million finger changes. I'm just doing that. It's almost sleight of hand, you can't even see it. Like that. And then when you move to the C major chord, you just take that shape and move it without any adjustments. Now that's one of those little movements in music that you come across now and again that makes you think, ah, that feels nice to play that. So there's something else going on here that makes these sound rhythmically punctuated correctly, which I'll show you in a second, but I don't want to throw too much information out in one go. So have a practice of just going like this. Don't worry about the silence in between the chords. Just get that under your fingers. Have a quick moment on that for just 1 second. My tea's cold. This is a disaster. I feel you, Mike. It's horrible.
Jamie,
Who said that?
Jim again.
It's Jim again.
Yeah.
Go on, then.
Can you leave your second finger in that shape and just add the fourth?
You could do. I wouldn't. Only so much as you're sending your brain mixed messages as to what the chord is achieving with the way you're feeling it, if you see what I mean. But that's only because I'm like an improvising guitarist, and I'd like to think of that chord as an arpeggio that I might use to solo. You know, I might go. So I want to know that that's what that sounds like when I feel that. Now, if I did that, then to me that still feels like a minor chord in my head with a major third on it. And I think things like that, you start to send yourself mixed messages so that you can't imagine a sound and suddenly go for it like that and know that it's going to be right. But I would only say that because it doesn't work for me, but you can, because why not? You know, it still sounds the same, and if it works for you and it sounds good, then who am I to tell you that it's wrong? I would just say that if you are interested in training your ear as well as learning chords in the way we're doing, be careful of that. That's an unclear message to yourself, I think, because that's got a minor third and a major third on the same string, and it's easy to get confused as to what sound you expect. But that's just my take on it. So, you know, I always give an annoying answer. Yes, you can do that if you want. So, this sounds like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Challenge yourself. See if you can do the count that I just did. I mean, I'm sure there's some of you in the room who can do this, no problem. But I'd be surprised if everybody in the room can count the way I just did and play it. Now, if you can't, then that should show you a little corner of your musicianship that needs work, because you should be able to count any rhythm and play any rhythm. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Try that for a moment or two. Make sure you say it out loud confidently, and then you should either be in for a nasty shock because you think, well, why can't I do this? It should be easy. But actually, it's not easy at all. And if you can't do it, work on it, and then you'll solve other problems. Okie dokie. Right. Enough of that.
I think I can't count before or play the guitar. So
I didn't hear that. Say that again, Mike.
I was just saying, I think I can't count before or play the guitar now. Neither of them are
Then my work here is done. Excellent. I just like making people feel bad. I've felt bad though, so don't worry about it. Okay, so it goes like this. This is from the D section, which is bar 27. I'm going to play up to the end of bar 34, and then I'm going to stop because I want to talk about what happens at bar 34 before we bash on. Okay, so what have we got? Forward thrust to it, doesn't it? It sounds great. Now, do you see at the end of bar 34 there are two lines, one of which is thicker than the other with two dots? Can you see that? That is the end of a repeat bar. And if you go back up, you may have missed it, but you might have spotted it, go back up and find the one which is pointing in the other direction, and consider those as bookends, like on a shelf, and they point into each other. And all that means is that's a repeat sequence, and you repeat everything that you just played, everything between those two bars that point in each other, and point at each other, excuse me, with the two dots. Okay, so just to make that point, and I'll do it quickly because obviously it's a simple principle. I'm going to play bar 18 to the end of bar 34, then I'm going to repeat bar 18 to 34. And I'd like you, because this is like a stealth music reading lesson at the same time as learning this tune, so read it with me as I play it. Okay, so you can see it and get used to what happens when you see a repeat bar. This is what happens. I'm going to do this a bit quicker so as not to waste time. Bar 18, 1, 2, 3, and... repeat. You cool? Try and follow all the notes. Verse 5. You see how it works? So that's what happens with a repeat bar. Now, where are we now? We're at bar 35. And fortunately, again, this is almost all identical again. So you do get a long way in this tune with not very much new information. Watch out for the sneaky D. Now here comes the interlude. 2, 3, 4. 2. And then it's electric guitar solo time. So let's drop down to bar 44, which is the last half of page 4, and we're going to have a look at this interlude. Okay, this is a lovely bit because you know what's coming. You know the guitar solo is almost there. That's what we're going to look at next week. So what have we got? We've got bar 44 is just a D chord held for the whole bar. So you strum it and you count in your head. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the name of a note which lasts a whole bar is called a semibreve, just so you know. The American system is to call that a whole note, but the English system is to call it a semibreve. Interestingly, no one uses it anymore, but there was a note called a breve, which was actually 8 notes, because older music, and I'm talking way back in sort of the 1100s, that far back, when they wanted to signify a much longer note, then they started with a breve and worked backwards. So we call this a whole note, and the Americans do, but we call it a half whole note by calling it a semibreve. Music's full of stupid things like that, but just so you know, nobody uses a breve anymore, but there was one. This is a semibreve. 2, 3, 4. Okay? Now, bar 45 is just a D major chord played with the same rhythm twice, which is da-da-da, da-da-da. So nothing particularly challenging about that. Bar 46 is the same thing again, except it changes to a C chord very briefly before it becomes this weird thing which is like it's like a D over a C, but it goes like this. It's such a brilliant chord, that. So, and that's another little corner where you know that Jimmy Page used to be a session musician, because that's not a guitar chord. That's a Lydian chord. That's the Simpsons chord. So it's a clever little bit of writing there. So being very specific about what I'm referring to here, this is bar 44, 5, 6, 7. Bar 47. First you've got a C, which I've written in that box for you. But he holds the C chord, but he only plays the bottom note, which is that. You could play the whole chord, it's okay. But then he plays this, which is this. You leave your C ringing, and you play the top two notes from a D major chord. But you do it over a C note. If anyone's a Joe Satriani fan and knows the song Flying in a Blue Dream, that's the same chord. Europe. So, let me just show you this again. And then you take the F sharp off. Actually, you know, in this transcription I should have put that chord is a D over C. I think I will update this and send it to you again. Have a try of that, because it's a very pretty chord. You might find that if you're into writing folk music, this might be a chord you might like. It's like a D major top over a C, and then you take your first finger off so that you're kind of playing, I don't know, the middle parts of a C add 9, if you think of Sweet Home Alabama, that kind of chord. So, if I just play from bar 44 for you, and you take a look at my hands for a second, this is what it sounds like. 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. I played bar 48 there as well. And I'll do it up to speed. 2, 3, 4. That lovely little line at the end there. So that will be the last thing we're going to talk about at the moment. So bar 44, 5, 6 and 7 is exactly the same as bar 48, 49 and 50. And bar 51 is kind of the same, except you've got this lovely little phrase and lick here, which brings us to the end of this section. So that is this again. Now, all I'll tell you about that is that it's just the same chord again. And then just playing the 3rd fret of the B string and an open G. So none of this is particularly difficult to interpret. And then a bunch of open strings. You play B, D, G, and then you play the D again, and then you're playing the top two notes from a D major chord again, and then you've got this 4, 2, 0. It's the 3 blind mice phrase that pops up all over the place, and that is little finger at the 4th fret of the G. You pluck it and then pull off with a slightly downward diagonal flick to re-energize the string, and then you do the same thing again onto the open D. Excuse me, open G. Vindaloo. Yeah, now that's a very common line, that. If anyone's ever tried to play Crazy Train, do you know that by Ozzy Osbourne and Randy Rhoads? It's in that as well. You get little lines like that all the way through this music from around about this time, 60s through till end of the 70s. Everybody's nicking each other's licks in the same key. So all I did there was just 4, 2, 0. And then go crazy. Okay? So this is what everything sounds like from 44 to the end, which brings us bang up to date. So read this with me while I play it, if you like, and if you're up for it, count it out loud, as in 1, 2, 3, 4. So, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. I can't play this rhythm and count that. I'm just going to play it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Guitar solo. Okay, that's for next lesson. So, any questions? Usual thing. Are we okay with what we've talked about there? There's, I think the only real challenge about these 5 pages we've talked about is how to get from that C chord to that D over C, like that. That is a bit tricky. But with a bit of practice, I think you'll get that. Now, Ian, have you got your hand up there?
Yeah, I have, and I can't find the hand up symbol. I mean, I can see where you're going with the rhythm. I mean, it's really well notated, and with practice you can get that. One of the challenges I have when I play this piece is actually the transition between picking and the clarity of the notes and the strum pieces.
Yeah.
Because I just cannot find a way that I can do them all with the plectrum and hybrid picking, or all
Sure, yeah.
with my fingers. I mean, have you got any hints and tips in that sort of area?
Oof. Well, yes, it definitely is tricky. I mean, the first one is that you should use a plectrum which isn't too hard.
Yeah.
You know, use a fairly floppy plectrum. Now, I'm actually using a ridiculous gypsy pick, which is about 4 millimeters thick. So ignore all the advice that I'm giving you for what I'm doing. But to do this like the record, you need a plectrum which is malleable, so that the tone is right.
Yeah.
And then you have a choice. You know, you mentioned yourself hybrid picking. Yeah. Can you show me how you hold your plectrum? Yeah. Okay. Well, right. Well, there is I would say, you know, others would argue otherwise. I would say that you're not holding your plectrum correctly, actually.
Right.
When you hold a plectrum like that, there's an imbalance between the support that you're offering the plectrum from the top and the support you're offering it from the bottom.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what I mean by that. Your thumb has this big muscle here, which means that when you play down, your thumb isn't going to move at all.
Sure.
Okay? If I could just ask whoever's mic is on to switch it off for a moment, just so I can get through this description. Thanks. So your thumb won't move when you play down. The problem is if you're holding your plectrum like this, that when you do an up strum, your finger doesn't have that muscle around it, and your finger will probably be bent downwards, which means the plectrum goes diagonal on the way back up, I would say. So I think a better way, if you can take the pain of sort of seeing what you can do to reprogram yourself, if you like, is to make a fist and put your plectrum on the last knuckle of your first finger, and then close your thumb down on it much further up your finger, like that. Can you see my hand like that?
Yeah.
So a lot of people do this, but don't. I would say go like that. Okay? Now, that should mean that with a little bit of practice, and with doing another thing I'll mention as well, the outside of your picking hand, there's that little bony bit there that you can use as a pivot.
Sure.
It's the same bit that you would use if you're palm muting, but you don't necessarily have to palm mute. You can actually just rest that part of your hand on the guitar, behind the strings or wherever, so that you're not trying to control the strings from your elbow, which means you've got, a couple of kilograms of weight or whatever it is, and you've got a foot's worth from the fulcrum there. That's impossible to do fine movements. But if you can plant that part on your guitar somewhere so that you're only moving the end of this limb, then it means you can be much more precise. If you hold your plectrum like that, then the plectrum won't flex. Yeah. So fairly quickly, within a couple of weeks of you doing this and practicing little exercises where you try and pick out certain strings, you should find that you start to feel where they are instinctively, because it's not a new experience each time you're doing it. It's much more tangible and learnable. And then once you've done that, you can just practice taking the chords and just trying to arpeggiate particular lines out of them like this. And you can apply that to much more complicated things if you want. And that is essentially what's happening there. That use the pivot to keep your hand in place, hold your plectrum in a way where it's predictable, and I think quite quickly you'll find that will solve that problem for you.
So if you were trying to play this, I don't know if you could ever actually play it solo, but if you were the only guitarist that was playing this, so you had to go between the subtlety of the early stages where you're arpeggiating, and then when you're doing the strumming, would you actually play with a plectrum all the way through?
Yeah, nice question. No, I don't think I would. I think I'd put the plectrum in my teeth and I'd play the intro like this.
Yeah.
Because the plectrum's too aggressive at the beginning. And you'd have to hybrid pick it anyway to get that. Yeah. But as the song progresses, then yes, I would start to switch to the plectrum and use it for everything, because the whole song is on a crescendo. So it's not just technique, it's tone too, for certain moments.
Yeah.
But, watch how Jimmy Page does it. There's a couple of fairly well-recorded bits of footage of him using that double neck SG where he's playing the 12 string and he's playing the 6 string. And you can see what he's doing, because on the record, there's God knows how many guitars on the record. There's probably 16. So he has to make a compromise take out of all of it and figure out those things on the fly live too. And you can see there are moments where he's planted his wrist, and there's other moments where John Bonham's kicking off where he's just thinking, right, have a bit of that. Who cares about being precise, So I think if you get your left hand in order, as in you learn the chord shapes correctly, and then you just try and make sure that every time you play it the same predictable way.
Yep.
Then very quickly you'll get it. The problem is if you're using your whole arm and that's not predictable, then no matter how many times you play it, your body doesn't learn the precision of what's required. At least that's my experience of things like that. And as soon as I changed that about my playing through advice from someone that told me, all my issues were solved within about 2 weeks. So try that.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Good luck. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. Amazing. Right. Well, next week we're going to have a go at cracking out the big licks. So this has been the acoustic stuff. You don't need an electric for next week. Certainly not. I'll just teach you the notes anyway, and you can play them on whatever instrument you want. But I'm totally going to use my Les Paul next week because it's all A pentatonic minor, but with the occasional Aeolian note, which is an F to make it sound right. So we'll do a bit of that, and I'll try and have the right sounds lined up and tell you how he gets them as well. So that's something to look forward to. So if everyone's happy and nobody's sort of crying themselves to sleep, then I think I'll say I'll see you next week, and I'm going to go and have a glass of wine. Everybody cool?
Yeah, it's really good, Jamie. Thank you.
Pleasure. Good. Well, good luck with your practice this week, and I'll see you a week today. Brill.
Yeah,
Thanks, Jamie.
All right, everybody.
Thanks,
Take
Jamie.
it easy.
Good night, everyone, and we'll send the
Bye-bye.
stuff out for next week later in the week. Okay.
Oh yeah, I'll film myself now. I'll send that to you in a
Okay,
second.
great. Thanks, Jamie.
Okay.
Cheers, guys, and Sarah, and Sheila as well. She's gone. Let's use the last one off. And Graham is struggling. Tony's struggling. Oh no, Tony's going to go. Tony's going. Bye, Tony.